want to thank everyone for joining us today. We are very excited to have ASEE with today. Before we get started, I'm actually going to ask Soraya Gage from NBC Learn, who is our incredible, generous host, to open us up and just give us a welcome and talk just briefly about NBC Learn.
Great. Thanks, Kelly, and welcome, everybody. I'm the general manager of NBC News Learn and delighted to be part of this. We're big believers in the STEM Alliance. And last year, we actually launched an Engineering Week, a collection called Discovering You, Engineering Your World, of young, diverse engineers in partnership with ASEE and the NSF and Chevron. So we're delighted to be part of this, and it's wonderful to host you all. So we look forward to listening.
Well, terrific, and thank you for that, Soraya. So today, I'm really excited because this is Engineering Week, which is a fabulous opportunity for all of us to learn more about engineering and really to celebrate the great work that's happening. And there's no one better and no other organization that I could really look to help us launch this is with the American Society for Engineering and Education. And today we have an all-star lineup that's actually going to share with us about the E in STEM, and their title is Infuse Engineering. So we're really pleased with that. And today our special lineup actually includes, today we have Stacy, and I'm going to allow them to kind of all introduce themselves, but I'm just going to give a quick overview of who will be with us today. That we have Stacy Klein-Gardner. We have, Geraldine Gooding, who's also part of it, Carolyn Kaplan. We have Bruce as well, and so you'll be hearing from him. And then we also have Melinda Zarsky and Alyssa Milto, who will be joining us on the call today. So we're really excited to hear. So I'm going to turn this over to you, Stacy, and to your team. And this is a great way to engage with Engineering Week. So we can't thank you enough.
Well, terrific. We are super excited to be with you today. So let me get the slides going here, and we'll be set. So hi, my name is Stacy Klein-Gardner, and I am pleased to present to you, along with my wonderful colleagues, Infuse Engineering Teaching Resources in the P12 classroom. And we're doing this in honor this week of Engineers Week. So we're glad that you can join us in our focus on engineering. Just so you know who we are, and you can probably see us down below in the WebEx. I'm a adjunct professor of biomedical engineering at Vanderbilt University. Alyssa Milto is from the Tufts Center for Engineering Education and Outreach. Mindy Zarsky is a professor at the University of Colorado at Boulder. And Bruce Wellman is an engineering chemistry teacher at the Olathe Northwest High School in Kansas. And so you'll hear from each of us today. Just to say a little bit about our organization. So ASEE is a very broad organization that covers engineering education from preschool through graduate school and beyond. And within ASEE, we have a P12 committee. And so you'll hear a little bit about that today. Overall, ASEE focuses on trying to work on excellent and broadly accessible engineering, empowering students and engineering professionals to create a better world. I love that our values include not only things like excellence and engagement, innovation, integrity, but it also includes diversity and inclusion as well, as those are very important to us. Our P12 committee focuses particularly, and this is this is a committee that is society-wide. It's not just our pre-college division, but it is society-wide and helps the whole organization to think about this from a systems engineering standpoint. Our vision is that there's lifelong excellence in engineering education. Our mission is that ASEE connects individuals and organizations who are committed to advancing excellence in engineering education, including that which occurs prior to, during, and beyond the college or university years. I should be really clear to say that we welcome new members. We would love to have more people join us. Our pre-college engineering education division is super active. And an educator membership each year is $50, which we think is on par with some of our peer organizations. You can just hit our website at asee.org and you can get all the information you need there of how to sign up. today you're going to hear from three separate programs that are a part of engineering education done well. First up, you'll hear from Novel Engineering. Secondly, you'll hear from teachengineering.org. And third, I'll have the mic again for Engineering for Us All. And I'm going to turn the presentation floor over to Alyssa Milto from the Novel Engineering program. Alyssa.
Hi. So I'm going to talk about novel engineering. I've never done this in 8 minutes, so we'll see how it goes. I have my phone so I can time myself right here. So at the Tufts Center for Engineering Education and Outreach, which we call CEO, I'm the director of outreach. We're right outside of Boston, and I'm really excited to be here today. So next slide. We're an interdisciplinary center researching kindergarten through college engineering education and translating what we find in our research into solutions. These solutions include an online teacher certificate program, curricula, professional development workshops, a mobile makerspace, a student documentation app. There are lots of different things we do. Our research focuses on students from kindergarten to college, and our topics range from looking at the role of role models on engineering education for students in K-12 classrooms to how to leverage design challenges to support students with autism. Next slide. We rely on research to practice and back model to inform the work we do. So today I'm going to talk about novel engineering. Next. Novel engineering started as an NSF research project looking at an interdisciplinary approach to engineering and literacy. In novel engineering, the characters become the clients and students build solutions to solve characters' problems. The setting and characters' needs and preferences supply the design constraints and criteria. There's not a set curriculum. Rather, we build professional development to help teachers to learn the approach and then use the text they are already using in their classrooms. We stress functionality, so we're always pushing students to make designs that can be tested and actually work. So next slide. This example is from the book Tales of a Fourth Grade Nothing by Judy Blume. And in this book, a 4-year-old younger brother of the main character who's in 4th grade always enters his older brother's room and destroys his thing. The older brother gets a pet turtle and is afraid his turtle will get hurt by his brother. And the older brother is also not allowed to lock his door. So 2 students in this design group came up with this idea to keep the turtle safe. This box that you see represents the turtle's cage, and when the cage is attached to a rope with a pulley, and that pulley is attached to the ceiling. And when the older brother leaves the room, he raises the turtle's cage and loops the rope around the hook on the wall. I could talk a lot longer about this, their conversations and the process they went through, but given this time, I'm going to keep it really short. But we had a toy turtle that went inside the box just to get an idea of how much the weight, what the weight of a real turtle would be, and made them test it to make sure it was functional. Okay, next slide. So here are just a few other examples from other books. We've done this with students in kindergarten to college and with adults, but most of the research was done in K-5. And we do have a lot of documentation for the book units that we've made after we've seen it done in a classroom through K-8. Next. So as we originally had this project, sort of sneak engineering into the classroom. So we thought, oh, we'll do it in an ELA class. That'll work. And what we found, though, was that not only did this benefit the engineering and the literature provide a really rich context for these engineering design activities, but the engineering also supported it and motivate the students in their literacy work. Reading, writing, all their conversational skills. So we were really excited about that. And a lot of the papers that came from this can talk about that. Next slide. So here's the process that the students follow. It's made from what we saw happen in the classroom. It's basically the engineering design process, but literacy is woven throughout. So, the book is in the very center because that's critical to everything that's going on. And there's writing as it goes along, and there are lots of opportunities for students to have conversation. So critical to this process is that feedback step, which includes physical testing and getting feedback from peers. We found that if we waited until the end for them to have this critique, most of the students weren't really listening because when they were getting critiques because they knew they weren't going to change anything. But when you embed it in the middle, they're really listening to see how it can make their design better. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to introduce a story, and we're going to move through the first couple steps. With students, we would read the book, have really critical conversations about the plot, the setting, and the characters. I would have them list all the problems that they find as they're reading, and then each group would solve a problem to choose a problem to solve. But today I'm going to give you the problems to solve, and we're really going to just sort of make this very, very short. So the book we're going to use is A Long Walk to Water, which is by Linda Sue Park. I don't know hopefully, if you haven't read this, it's a great book. It's really short, but it takes 2 stories that happen in parallel, and at the end, they meet up. So what we're going to do is we're just going to look at the story of Naya. So there was another boy, Salva, who was in the other story, but we're going to look at Naya and some of the problems that she has. And most of her problems come from having to walk several miles each day back and forth to get some water for her family. Next. All right. So here are the problems. So what you're going to do is you're going to choose one of these problems, and we're going to try and get this a little bit interactive. So you're going to just take a couple minutes to design a solution just on paper. You could just type it up. So one is, as I said, Naya has to walk for hours over rough terrain, and it's littered with thorns. So in the book, it talks a lot about how her feet are really hurt and they're very bloody because of these thorns. And again, if we had the book, you would get a lot of extra information. The second one, this walking back and forth to the water takes a long time. The water is very heavy, and she has a container that she has on her head, and she goes back and forth. And the third problem, she has a little sister. They're both very thirsty, and it's very difficult to have her younger sister come with her as they're going back and forth. And then when they get to the water, it is brown and muddy, so they can't drink it. Okay, next slide. All right, so here are the three problems again. So what you're going to do is you're going to take a minute or two to pick one of the problems and then design a solution. So again, if you're in my class, I would have a planning sheet for you that's going to prompt you to think about the things that are on the top of this slide. But today, we're going to just do this really quickly. So as you're doing this, think about engineering, the structure and stability. How is this going to stay together? How is it going to function? Your client, she is a 10-year-old girl. So think of that in terms of her strength and her size. And also, what design constraints and criteria do you think, you're going to have to guess for a lot of it, but do you think would be inherent in this setting? All right, so I'll give everybody just a quick minute. And as you're coming up with your solutions, you can type them into the chat. So you're doing solution and some of your design constraints and criteria, things that you're thinking about. So I have not done it this way. I'm sorry?
Should I pull us out of the stop sharing my screen so we can all see the chat box, or can you see it already?
I can see it.
Okay, then I will stay right here.
I've never done it this interactive with a webinar like this, so I'm not quite sure how this is going to work. So if this was in a class, we'd go through and have kids names, we'd pick one of the problems, and then as a class, we would brainstorm a solution, just especially if they've never done this before, so they can really get used to the idea of what I'm asking for, or the teacher's asking for, and what the whole process is if they've never really done an open-ended engineering design problem. So I'll give everyone a minute and then ask you to start typing in there. Even more awkward on a webinar than it is when you're walking around a room. And if you have any questions, you can just type them in there, especially if you have questions about what might be in the book and the information you may need as you're thinking about your solution. I found out after I'd done this book a few times that the woman whose family, the other, Naya is a fictional character, but the other character, Salva Dutt, he's a real person, and he came to live with a family in New York State. And I didn't realize at the time, but the daughter of the family actually lives in the Boston area. So I've been able to meet her and sort of really get the background to the book, which has been very interesting. All right, so if people can start typing in. So somebody is new to the book, new to the group. So what you're doing, if you can just do it really quickly, as you're picking challenge A, B, or C from the book, A Long Walk to Water, and just really trying to come up with a brainstorm a solution and then type it in the chat box. All right, so if somebody will share, because we do need to move on to make sure I don't run over my time. I hear typing. Okay, so if somebody's thinking about footwear, you don't need to read the book. You just have to pick, there's challenges on the screen, A, B, or C. You just pick one of those. Obviously, this would be a much better activity if you had read the book. I'm just trying to give you a taste of it, of novel engineering. So as if you're thinking about footwear, think about the materials that Naya may have. Yep, leaves from plants. Okay. And with the leaves, what part of the shoe would they be? And then how do you think you'd keep the shoe on your foot? Okay. Yep, the materials would need to be thick enough to keep the thorns out, absolutely. And we've had people do this 2 different ways, where some groups have thought about materials that are in that area, and then other people have thought it more like Tom's shoes, something really lightweight and cheap that they could ship over. Somebody's thinking about filtration and how to do it naturally. That's something that's definitely come up, which leads to conversations, especially with kids, about just because the water looks clear, does that actually mean that you can drink it? What might still be a problem with that? Okay, using sand. All right, so we are going to move on just because I'm reaching my 8 minutes. So if you can go to the next slide, keep going. And here I'm just going to share some of the students' ideas. So here are some shoes that students came up with. We made them test them. So at first they were trying to think of like doll shoes, and we said, no, they actually have to be, you have to put them on. They have to be the size of your foot so you can walk around outside. So we're really pushing for testing and functionality. Okay, next slide. Portable water filters. This was to address the problem when they get to the water, they're not able to drink. So this is something that was very lightweight and they could carry along with them. Next. Another group thought about, you bring the water back, but it's still dirty. How can you filter it so the family can drink it? Next. And here you can see this group, they tackle the problem of transporting the water and having Naya's younger sister come along, and she would get tired. So this cart would pull the sister on the way to water, and then it would take water on the way back home. And you can see we really made this group test with a person. So they went outside, they tried it inside. The original design didn't work very well because the rope detached pretty easily. So they fixed that. And hopefully you can see on that picture on the right, they used PVC tubing on the bottom, and they did this because they felt the wheels would have difficulty on rocky terrain. So they were thinking about that as well. All right, next slide. I think that is all right. So thank you very much. My email is there. You can either visit the Novel Engineering website or just email me directly, and I'd love to share more about the project. Thank you.
Thank you, Alyssa. I really enjoyed hearing your presentation about novel engineering, and I hope this will appeal to many of the schools who are thinking about ways to integrate engineering into other disciplines. I think this is a perfect way to do that. So,
you're welcome. Thanks for including me.
Absolutely. All right. Next up for y'all, we have the Teach Engineering Digital Library. I'm going to turn the floor over to our presenter, Mindy Zarski.
Hi, everyone. So happy to share teachengineering.org with you this afternoon. So this project has been around for a long time. It originally started as a group of universities that had undergraduate and graduate students that were sending their engineering undergraduate and graduate students that were sending them into local P12 classrooms to teach hands-on engineering. And we realized that we were all doing the same types of things and thought, wouldn't it be great if we could find a place to share all of our lessons and activities together so that we could, capitalize and utilize everybody else's great ideas? So then the Teach Engineering Digital Library was born. The point of the Teach Engineering Digital Library is just to be a free resource for teachers and for educators all over to have access to lesson plans and activities and materials to bring engineering into their classrooms. So as you can see on this particular slide, right now, Teach Engineering at this point, we've been around for probably about 15 years, has 89 different curricular units, over 516 lessons, 1,061 hands-on activities. We also have a new section with maker challenges, and then 33 of what we call sprinkles, but those are after school activities, so informal learning settings. And it's all published by people around the country. So everything that's up there right now is from 57 unique contributors. Those are oftentimes universities and colleges or their students, but also secondary and elementary teachers around the nation. There's 31 more unique institutions in the queue. Right now for publishing, we have a pretty rigorous publishing schedule. So what you're going to see on there is going to be consistent, and it's going to be reviewed both by engineers and for content as well as educators for appropriateness in the classroom. We, at the moment, we have a little over 3 million unique users accessing Teach Engineering annually. Most of those are from the United States, but we do get users from around the globe. And we've just branched into putting a bunch of these items for free on Teachers Pay Teachers as well. Next slide. So what I'm going to do today, instead of walking you through an activity, there's so many of them, and I hate to choose favorites. I have probably about 30, 40 favorites. But instead, I'm going to show you around the site a little bit. And what I'm going to show you is how the site is used, how we use, we align to NGSS standards. I'm going to show you also some of our YouTube videos, and I'm going to show you where we have some stuff about engineering design in there as well. So I am now the presenter, so I'm going to share my screen with you. Oh, that's not what I was going to share with you. Here we go. So this is the teachengineering.org digital library. You just type in right up here, teachengineering.org, and you'll get to this page. And this is a pretty great page, for me anyway. What I like up here is that you can just search all of our curriculum. We can browse just like you're doing a Google search. So you can type in something that you want it to look at like earthquakes and give it a search, and then everything that would pop up that we have around earthquakes.
Mindy, I'm sorry to jump in. I don't think we're seeing your screen.
Oh, okay. What are we seeing?
You?
Oh, me. Hi, me. Let's see. Where is that? I'll pop it up again. How's that?
There you go. Yep.
Okay, there we go. Perfect. Thanks. Thanks, Bruce. So here we go. teachengineering.org. And this is this browse bar I was talking about. When you land on this site, you'll see some of our newer stuff pops up on the front, things that we want to highlight. And this is where you might browse for something that you are interested in, such as earthquakes is what I had typed in. And once you search on that, it pops up everything we have on earthquakes, which looks like about 98 items. So that's a lot. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to head back to that home screen for you, and I'm going to show you some of the things, the features of Teach Engineering that I find are the most useful. So right here at the bottom, if you are new to Teach Engineering, this is a great landing spot. You're going to see at the bottom what are the most popular lessons and activities being used by teachers in elementary school, middle school, and high school currently. This is just pulled by numbers. So what people are clicking on most often to look like. So those are the most popular. And then along with that, we have the most shared. And again, how many of these are shared with other people? We have comments from teachers about the curriculum that they enjoyed. For frequent users of Teach Engineering, we have a bar for recently added. So if you're looking for what's new on the digital library, this is, again, it's just auto-populated. And then this one's a really nice one at the end. This is our editor's pick. And every month we have curriculum editors who pick out their favorites. It looks like February 2020 is a Trebuchet Design and Build Challenge. And from there, you can click in and see what's going on with that lesson or activity. If we head back up to the top, what I would like to show you, just a couple things, is we are aligned to standards. We are aligned to the NGSS. And I am trying to click on that. Oh, you can click on the NGSS. We'll go over there. I have to move Bruce out of my image. Okay, there we go. So this page right here talks about the NGSS. And what I want to show you on here is that we actually align all of these lessons and activities to all 3 dimensions of the standards. So not just what are the science and engineering practices, but also we align to the cross-cutting concepts and the disciplinary core ideas. I'm just going to pull one up to show you what it looks like. Let's see what looks interesting. How about oil spill cleanup methods? In this activity, as you can see, it popped up on the NGSS standards for this activity. It shows where they're located, and you can see how it gives us our performance expectation, where we're aligned in the practices and the core ideas as well. We do this for all of the activities on here to make it easier for educators to align, to bring some engineering in and to align it to what they're already teaching. While I'm on this page, why don't I just go ahead and show you what an engineering, a Teach Engineering activity looks like. you're going to land on a landing page. It's always going to look the same. You're going to have a quick look that shows you what grade it was written for, the time required, and the expendable cost for materials. We also have YouTube videos that are, short 3 to 5 minute videos that show you what the activity will look like. And we have a YouTube channel as well. And then you're going to get the curriculum in this unit, how it relates to other curriculum, and then you're going to get the same thing every time. You're going to get a summary, how it connects to engineering. You're going to get learning objectives, those standards, materials list, worksheets and attachments. All of these are editable, prerequisite knowledge, and then things like an introduction, motivation, procedures, assessments, and troubleshooting tips, extensions, how to scale, and all of that. The other couple things I just want to point out for you, we also have some neat pieces on here. We have a section on the engineering design process that you can share with your students that shows, we have a video on the engineering design process, talks about the different steps of the engineering design process, and then we'll also give you lessons and activities that engage your students in those different steps. Some design aligned curriculum. The other couple great things we have now, we have a math hub and a physics hub. We also have, some things about what is engineering. For students, there's a great video by NSF about what is engineering that is up here and why would we teach it, engineering in K-12. And then also a great page that I think that works for students on exploring the various types of engineers. And on each one of those, say you click on biomedical engineers, we show you some curriculum, and we have an info sheet on what is biomedical engineering, and they're pretty nice looking too. I'll pop up one for you. These nice looking sheets on what do biomedical engineers do, where do they work, and what are some of the curriculum that we have around biomedical engineers. So there's a lot of stuff on here, a lot of things to look through. I mentioned those videos that we have as well. We have a YouTube channel, Teach Engineering. We have we have over 4,000 subscribers there. And what's nice about this is we have a lot of the different activities, and we keep adding more. We have students at University of Colorado Boulder that are working on these videos every week to upload them. And it just gives you a snapshot of the different activities and some of the supplies that are used and some of the questions you might ask when running these activities. And I think that is my time. So I'm going to go ahead back in here and switch back to Stacy. Let's see.
Excellent.
And allow Stacy to have the floor again.
Great.
If I can find you. Hold on.
Thank you, Mindy. I'll say while you're doing that, Teach Engineering is one of my personal all-time favorites of engineering resources to give out. It is completely free, but it is just so adaptable to any situation you teach in, any kind of time frame you want to do some engineering. So I can't encourage you enough to take a look at it. All right, I have the privilege of talking about a project that I work on. It's called Engineering for Us All, E4USA, and we are really focusing on designing new curriculum for the high school level to generate a new and more diverse generation of engineers. You could see our university partners on this NSF-funded project. But the idea is around that we're creating a 2-course sequence of high school engineering classes. This class that I'll talk about today is our first course. It's kind of geared for 10th and 11th graders, although right now in our pilot testing, we have 9th through 12th graders participating. It's designed to be used as a full year course, a 30-week course focused on 4 big ideas that we've really taken as our framework for this course. Unlike other engineering offerings offered by other groups, this course really has a design focus, not a technology focus, nor is it a survey course. We focus in on the 4 things that you see listed below, and I'll tell you just a little bit more about. So what's new and different? Some of the things are that we invite all schools, all teachers, and all students to participate fully, regardless of what your technical background is. In fact, in our pilot this year, we have a history teacher and a music teacher who are among our 9 engineering teachers. So I'm excited about that. Looking at our curriculum overview and thinking about what our big questions are, we start with Discover Engineering. What is engineering? Am I an engineer? And we spend time focusing on helping students identify engineering in the world and hoping that they identify with it themselves and can find it in themselves that they already are natural engineers, but giving them a place to see themselves coming in and belonging and being a piece of this. We also talk a lot about engineering in society. So what kinds of problems do engineers solve and what sort of value do they create in the world? In fact, the course that I teach in here locally in Nashville, Tennessee, at Brentwood High School, our course is called Engineering as Service Learning. And I really like that aspect, the bringing service learning to bear. We look at things like the grand challenges in engineering, and focus on ethics as well, and thinking about how you bring a solution to bear for society. Our third objective in the overview is engineering professional skills. So how do I act like an engineer? How do I communicate? So we look at not just the engineering design process, which is the 4th thing that's coming, but how do we communicate in writing, orally, visually? How do I work with an audience? How do I participate in a team in an effective way? How do I manage my project as well? Our 4th area, not surprisingly, is the engineering design process. So thinking about how do I start with a problem, whether that's a problem I have found personally somewhere in my community, or it's a problem that a client has brought to me. But how do we work through the steps of the engineering design process, being sure to actually include computational tools, prototyping, and the improved stage of the engineering design process. We started our project in the fall of 2018 and wrote our curriculum in the first year. We launched this past August. We're in 9 high schools nationwide. And then next year we moved to 40 schools nationwide. We've accepted many of those schools, but we have a few remaining spots. So I wanted to be sure to mention that the application is still open in case you're at a high school that you think might be interested in being one of our field test sites next year. Why would you want to? You get amazing professional development. It's free to you. In fact, your teacher who participates gets a stipend, and you get money that goes towards buying materials and supplies for your school. I love the part about the opportunity to inspire and engage students, particularly historically underrepresented populations in engineering. Our professional development begins each spring with some virtual professional development that takes place online, some of it synchronous and some of it asynchronous. And then we move to having a 1-week workshop. This summer we'll have 4 sites for this, bringing together educators in a regional fashion so that you are trained in person and are ready to go. We'll also bring your university partner to the table then and allow you to spend time with them, thinking about how you'll work the next year and how the university can help to bring resources to bear. We have an active community of practice that involves not only our classroom teachers, but also the faculty that are members of it, people from the community, just really looking at it from all angles and learning from each other. So right now, I'll take a minute and say, engineering is everywhere. So let's talk about that for a second. And this is actually taken from one of our activities in the very first unit. So let's talk about your shoes right now. So take a look, twist your leg up, take a look at your shoe, assuming you have one on, and make a sketch of the sole, or just study it for a second and look at the features that your sole of your shoe has. And I want you to think about, what are some of the features you see in the sole? And what's the function of these features? So if you will, if I can get you to put your thoughts in the chat box, I would like to hear, while we're all doing kind of really with a little bit of reverse engineering here, what are some of the features you see in your sole, of your shoe that is, and what functions do you think that has? Lots of ridges. So what do you think ridges, what purpose would ridges have in a shoe? Let's see, Mindy reports that she has some grip on her soles to keep her from slipping on snowy Colorado sidewalks. I think that's particularly important this time of year. Patricia mentioned safety, no slip, extra thickness in the heel and sole. Why do you think the extra thickness is there? Wearing and tearing and balance, definitely on all three of them. I chuckled to myself when I chose the picture of this very high heel that I put on my slide. Definitely there's balance. Balance has to be thought about, and balancing on that little teeny skinny heel is hard, but it does provide a very important function. There's also fashion we might think about. So let me show you one of the students' projects from this year. This team called their shoe, they were challenged to take the shoe that they had and to improve upon it for a particular client. And so this team called their shoe the Defender, for the woman who needs no man. And the features of their shoe includes things like Velcro straps for optimal application, pepper spray secured in a back pocket, a retractable knife at the front of the shoe, a safety switch at the back heel, a GPS tracking device and alarm system in the heel of the shoe. Targeted audience was a female, and then of course a gel sole in her shoe for optimal comfort as well. So I enjoyed seeing how they took what was probably a regular shoe for them and thought about what additional functions they would like for it to have and how they could incorporate different features of the shoe to accomplish that. So if you're interested in the Engineering for Us All course, we'd love to hear from you. You can reach us at e4usa@umd.edu or on our website, or you can always follow up with me directly. All right, so that was a little bit about Engineering for Us All. I hope you've now seen and heard about novel engineering, something that's broadly applicable across P12, particularly in engineering literacy kinds of settings. You've heard about teachengineering.org, where you can find something for pretty much anything you'd want to do, all for free. And lastly, you heard a little bit about a high school opportunity. We're really focusing on engineering design. What I'd like to do now is turn the floor over to Bruce Wellman, who's also a member of our P12 committee. He's taken some of your pre-submitted questions. He's going to facilitate us through some of those questions. We'd also love for you to take advantage of the feature to ask any additional questions or follow-up questions that you might have.
Great, thank you very much, Stacy. So to give you a little bit of background about myself and how I'm going to be addressing the questions, I am a classroom chemistry and engineering teacher at a public high school. So in our particular department, we are trying to provide students an opportunity to take a little bit deeper dive into engineering along with their regular courses. We have created a sequence of engineering courses that students take as an elective alongside their science classes. So I just want to give a shout out again to the Teach Engineering, because I have used that as a practitioner many times to be able to say, hey, I'm working on a particular concept in chemistry. Wonder what's available in terms of the engineering curriculum or projects that would allow us to be able to incorporate that into it. So I use that, and it's a great tool, especially as Kansas is an NGSS state, so it allows me to quickly find some things that are aligned and helpful for that. And also, I really appreciate having that it goes through a process of being reviewed by peers before it is published there. So what do we have is we have about 6 questions that were prepared ahead of time. Now, like I said, hopefully you'll have a chance to there's some new ideas or questions have come up with that. In order to give you that time, just go into the chat function. If you've been like me, though, you have to make sure it's going to all attendees to make sure everyone's seeing it. My little mouse was jumping, and I'm like, I think it set it to one person, so I didn't mean to until I got it straight. So just be careful that it's going to all attendees. And we're going to kind of switch. I'm going to take a couple questions. Mindy's going to do, Stacy. We'll take one question each. We'll come back around for another round and just kind of get hopefully the personalized touch for you that are participating today. So the first one was thrown out by a group, by an individual saying, why is everyone thinking about robotics when they talk about STEM? There's so much more to STEM to get K-12 students the workforce ready, and no one's willing to invest in the right things. Why is that? Well, let me just share a couple of things that I think we have learned in our particular department and been able to partner with the research that's going on by other members in the pre-college engineering division. One of the things that I think it's important to consider is historically, we have not done a good job in the engineering education or profession about really reaching all people. And so we have seen a skew within the people that are currently in engineering as being a lot of males and a lot of white males. So when we start looking to include more, I think it's always good to look at the research to see, hey, what is appealing to those who are not currently in engineering? So one of the things I know our department has gleaned from the research is making sure that all people we're trying to reach out to, especially some that have been underreached in the past, that it's how are we seeing engineering as a helping profession? How are we having an opportunity to use my engineering design to really have a direct impact with people, that human connection? So as I come to the engineering, the robotics piece, we have found that robotics in ours provides an opportunity to give a complete sequence of truly testing your ideas out relative to other designs. So from an educator's point of view, we have partnered with organizations like First Robotics because we can focus on helping the students learn about the constraints and stuff with it. But as an educator, I don't have to come up with a new design every year. And if you are worked around students for very long, you realize, hey, if you do the same design every year, they just talk to each other from year to year. So I would agree that by no means is robotics the end all, but I think sometimes people are looking for something quick and it's partially prepared and they jump into it. And I would suggest be open to that as a first step, but keep in mind saying, who didn't we reach with the robotics? In our particular department, we started a new course called Engineer a Better World. And that allows the students coming in to say, hey, what problems have you identified? And then let's put together a team that address the problems you address. We are finding we have, it's more appealing to many of our female students. The diversity is much richer in that particular class because we're reaching out. So as a program, just be thinking about, it might be a good first step, but in terms of being inclusive and trying to have everyone come involved, it's not the end all. And I think we're saying that, hey, this is why you look for multiple resources. And we have some great ones today. I like the novel one. I have to admit, I'm going to try to bout that over to my English department to see if we get any leverage on that one. So Mindy, I'd like to, if you have kind of the question number 2, if you'd be willing to kind of address that, read out the question and just give your thoughts on the second question from the pre-submitted questions.
Thank you, Bruce. Happy to. So the question I have is what engineering design plan or language do you think is most effective with 3rd and 4th graders? And what are some grade 3 through 12 activities, games, projects that you can do to introduce students in an informal learning setting? So, well, the first thing that I want to say around this is, yes, using the word engineer and engineering design is really, really important. I do think that a lot of times we, as educators, sort of get a little fearful of calling something engineering when we're not exactly sure if that's what we're doing, and we don't want people to get the wrong impression. And I say use it. Let's use it a lot. Let's have it become a common household term. And some of the types of terms that we use in engineering design, things like brainstorming or ideate or plan, create, improve, iterate, constraints, those are terms we want our young students to get used to using as well. And honestly, when they get to go home and they get to tell their families that they learned a new term that has to do with engineering and they sound, they're really happy about that and they get to teach their family, it's pretty great as well. As far as what design cycle I would use, I think that there's so many of them. This is very funny. A little background on me. I teach undergraduate students engineering design. That is part of my job. I also teach science, math, and engineering undergraduate students who want to become classroom teachers. I teach them about how to bring engineering into their classrooms over at CU Boulder. And there's a lot of different design loops out there. There's a lot of different language and loops, and there's not really a good right answer for that. So there are some organizations out there that have some nice simple ones. I think that when you're thinking about elementary school students, using ones that have up to about 5 or 6 steps is totally a great way to go. Don't get them down in that. You can see on Teach Engineering, the one we have up there has 7. I think the big steps from there, probably asking that question, imagining your ideas, creating a plan, developing a prototype. So create, testing, and improving are probably the really important ones that you would want to use there. Let's see, what was that other part of that question? Oh, that after school piece. So, you know, the best thing for students and to get those young students engaged in engineering is to get them to be doing it hands-on, right? So let's give them some engineering challenges. Let's have them use some of these resources that you heard about today, like Novel Engineering and Teach Engineering, or Engineering is Elementary out of the Boston Museum of Science. What are these great resources we have at the elementary level? Use those. But also, if there's not something that's speaking to you, look around your classroom. Say to the students, what's around my classroom or around my community that's something that I'd like to improve? And then use those sort of language that we just mentioned around engineering design, get them to think like an engineer and figure out what they could do to improve whatever it is that problem is that's around their classroom.
Can I jump in for a second?
Sure.
So I just want to say, Bruce was talking about sort of the activities, and you just brought up again, like having kids look around and solve a problem. But we've seen it with 2nd, 3rd graders as well, that they're very able to pick out a bunch of problems and then solve it. And just want to sort of make a call for letting kids do open-ended projects that don't have steps to follow. Right. I think that goes to the engineer design process as well. I always prefer to actually let the kids design a little bit and then have a conversation about it and then bring in the vocabulary, versus giving them these are the list of steps that you're going to do and this is what we're going to call it. I think it's a lot more meaningful to them if they experience it and they can be part of that conversation about what it is, versus you just lecturing to them and telling them what the names are.
Definitely. And I agree with you on those youngins too. I might have young children and they've been able to engineer before their school days. That pre-K is definitely a space where they can work. And yeah, giving them the language and having them understand when the language ties into what they're doing is really important.
This is Soraya Gage. Can I jump in for a second?
Sure.
I just wanted to say that in the collection that we did of videos, just to build on what you guys have all been saying, Bruce, about what girls are interested in, we did an NSF focus group around what would make girls get excited about engineering, and it came out, to reinforce what you're all saying, that they want to help others, collaborate, improve lives, mentor, be creative, and be persistent. And the videos that we did looked at engineering through that lens. You can achieve all of that through engineering. We also profiled young, diverse engineers, because you kind of have to see it to be it. But I don't mind sharing the NSF study we did, the focus group testing on engineering, and those video links with everybody on the call, because I think it really actually serves what you're looking for.
That would be great.
Thank you.
Very much. Stacy, I think we head over to you to our question number 3.
Sure thing. My question is, how do you make sure there is strong content learning in STEM projects? I have to say I love this question. I love it because it drives me nuts when engineering sort of becomes like, oh, let's make something, and you make it, and like that's the end of things. I'm a strong believer, like, you still have to be accomplishing your standards and really learning something while you're doing that. So I had 2 responses that came to my mind when I thought about that. One is what you assess is what's important to you. So if you choose to use some sort of assessment, a rubric, whatever it is, that allows you to get out content that supports any engineering design that they've done, then you're putting your money where your mouth is in that standpoint. So that's my quick and easy answer there. My other thought is, so I used to be a high school physics teacher, and I started thinking about which of my units I thought was the most offensive either to my students or to me. And electric fields turned out to be it. And I can only imagine how boring of a teacher I was if I thought what I was doing was boring. And so I reframed that to think about what sorts of problems do I solve? I'm a biomedical engineer by training. So what do I solve that uses electric fields, and sort of started to turn my curriculum on its end. And just so you know, I came up with electrocardiograms, EKGs. Everybody's heard of them. They know what they are. Well, you don't do an EKG without an understanding of electric fields. And so I started to put design questions as well as engineering science questions up front that had students thinking about how does an EKG work and why does it measure, what is it measuring? And so then I knew I was embedding the physics as well as some anatomy and physiology and some other things into it. So I was very intentional about that as a classroom.
I think it's a great response. And again, I think we are still in the learning curve. For those of us who are in a state that has NGSS, being able to think strategically about both and is really something that's best done, in my opinion, as a community. That's why we each bring our experience. This is where being able to partner with people across the pre-college engineering division at ASWE has been wonderful, to be able to get that perspective and brainstorm together. And what does that really look like when rubber meets the road? Now, shifting a little bit, a question was given about saying that, this individual is advocating for as much as possible about, what are the key policy issues that we need to have education leaders be aware of in terms of this engineering education. And also, another question was about the lack of progress that we've been making about collaborations across education and business sectors. How would we advise going forward with that? I'm pretty involved with that in our particular context here. What we have in the high school is something called career and technical education. And in that, we are required to have these meetings with businesses. So you may not be aware of it, but every high school is having meetings at least 2 times a year, depending on which part of their career technical education, with businesses and professionals in the community. So that's a great kind of a springboard to it. So I think the idea is many times people are just not aware of kind of what's happening and building upon that. So I would suggest that if you are interested in finding out about that, that's one area where I have seen that at least the communication has started. In terms of how are we impacting the learning, we sometimes are at odds with our educational leaderships in our district, because they're saying one thing and our business partners, for instance, in our district, we have this little company called Garmin. Maybe you've heard about it. So one of our people are, on our advisory board, and they're coming to us, well, this is kind of what we're seeing. And so we've got to say, hey, but this is what our business partners are doing. So I think it's a work in progress, but I think it's extremely valuable in our 21st century for us to be able to have relevance to our students, is that we are in discussion with about what are the true characteristics of a graduate that our business partners community wants to have. So you're right. I would advocate, I think, first of all, that we have regular communication, and we also start to say, what are our actions that are going to be coming from that? It's one thing to sit down and talk real nice, but it's when rubber meets the road. For instance, we have taken on a project about ethics. And we said, what does ethics look like in your profession? Help us bring that into the classroom. And so for me, in a chemistry context, I say, well, when we're doing the chemistry, we're talking about the ethics of having good data and not fudging your data. Then what happens, we go in the engineering, we said, hey, you are going to do the same thing there. You're going to be making a design. You had to run the numbers. What's at stake if you don't? And so we have been able to partner with local engineering firms that come in and actually tell some stories of things that have happened that have not been ethical, and have the students grapple with it and say, whoa, how does that work? So that's been great, from a short 1 or 2 days, having a professional come in, to this ongoing relationship that says, how are we changing what we do in the classroom based upon what our business partners do? I can tell you there are some places it's going well. We've got room to grow in there. One of the habits of mine for engineering is optimism. I believe we can design a better solution with it. So just in your system, see if you can help one iteration of improvement. Be part of that solution and do it, but get people talking. Sometimes food's a good way to start. That's just saying. People never seem to say no to, hey, can we meet over? We'll pay for a meal for the teachers and people to come there for lunch. Try it. Okay, next one, moving on from food. Mindy's going to come back to about student motivation in the midst of difficult lessons.
So my next question actually ties really nicely into what Bruce was just saying about how to make a student motivated despite difficult lessons. And so, my experience with this has been when you can make your lessons relevant or following the interests of your students, then it helps to keep them motivated. So Bruce is saying reaching out to local businesses, that's one, and industry, and having those conversations not only about the content that we're teaching, but also maybe they have some ideas for projects you could get your students engaged in. Things that it can be as simple as, surveying your students and knowing what kinds of things that they're interested in that you can relate to your content, whether it's sports or local events that are going on, to getting something like a real community client. And so having local industry members or having local non-for-profits come up with ideas for your students to design. Usually, most of these local partners, when you explain that you're working with younger students and even elementary students, they get the fact that this is a learning opportunity. They're not expecting to come out with the next great patent from what they're going to come up with, but they might. I've definitely seen some K-12 ideas that have blown me away. But the thought is, if you can get the students then thinking not just what interests them or what's the content you're trying to teach in the classroom, but connected with somebody in the community who has a need and is asking them for help, that is a really neat way to go as well to keep your students motivated. It gives that connection, and it also lends to what we just mentioned earlier about wanting to help others and wanting to do things that benefit society.
Thank you so much, Mindy. We're going to hand it back to Stacy now. We're just about out of time. I've been kind of monitoring ones. We haven't had any pressing questions come out. So as we're short on time, those questions were sent in ahead of time. I think they did a good job of trying to frame and put in context a little bit more what we're talking about with engineering in the P12 environment. So Stacy, bring us home.
All right. Well, thank you to all of our presenters, and thank you to all of you who submitted questions ahead of time. That was some great conversation fodder that we had to react to. I hope that you will visit us at the American Society for Engineering Education. It's asee.org, and I hope that you might join us there with our work. And even more than that, I really hope that you find a way to infuse engineering into your work, especially here during Engineers Week. So I will sign off and pass it back to Soraya at NBC Learning.
Okay, thank you so much, everybody. I thought it was a really rich conversation. And please visit NBCLearn.com for more engineering-focused videos that can help you.
All right, and thank you, everyone. And just remember, one of the things we can also do is we can post some of those questions onto the STEM Leadership Alliance website. So for some of the questions we didn't get to, and we can just continue to link resources there. And again, just a reminder, the ASEE conference is June 21st to 24th. So please visit their website for more information. And also we hope you can join the STEM Leadership Alliance Summit, July 12th to the 16th. And again, visit the website, stemleadershipalliance.org. So thank you, everyone. Thank you at ASEE. Thank you, NBC Learn. This was a wonderful conversation. And I'm really excited for more engineering challenges there, and go Engineering Week.
Thanks.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.